On tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs-related podcast, the winter meetings have come and gone, and all we have to show for it is a few relievers, Brendan, but more to come. We'll break down those pitchers and rumors and more to come for the Chicago Cubs offseason on tonight's edition of the CHGO Cubs-related podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs-related podcast driven by Toyota. Let's go places. Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Thursday. It is December 11th. And Brendan, the winter meetings have come and gone. Cubs do not have Alex Bregman. Some minor moves, perhaps, but ones that, as we saw last year, I think will end up mattering. And I do want to get Brendan's breakdown on a few of the new pitchers that have joined the fold. We will talk about that. And then we will continue to sift through these rumors because I don't think I can say with a lot of certainty what I think Jed Hoyer and company are going to do the rest of this offseason, Brendan, but I do feel pretty comfortable saying that Hoby Milner is not going to be their big get of the offseason.
You never know. Listen, Brad Keller was the non-roster invitee.
I guess that's true. Maybe he is the most important person they signed. We just don't know it yet.
Fast forward this clip 9 months when we're in October, clinch and playoff series, Corey.
Right. Demon Hoby Miller, as everybody's tweeting. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. So I don't know. Let's start generally on the winter meetings, because I do think there was some interesting stuff that we got, namely like from Craig Counsell. I thought the interviews he did were pretty interesting.
I thought the Craig Counsell interview was the most revealing, if you want to call it that, he's been for the past 3 years with the Cubs.
Yeah, and kind of unique for the winter meetings, hotel lobby setting, but
maybe he was inspired by Ben Johnson. He's like, you know what, that coach over there for the Bears, everyone loves that guy. I'm going to be a little bit more revealing myself.
Revealing and taking his shirt off.
Maybe that's the next thing he'll do.
Oh, you mean like giving information? I got you. Yeah. Either way. So yeah, I mean, look, not a ton has truly gone down yet. I mean, there's a lot of big fish still to make decisions in this offseason. We've seen a little movement. We've seen a couple teams, kind of being aggressive here and getting some of their moves in. But a large portion of the names that we have discussed, Brendan, be them bats or pitchers, still out there. We're still sifting through these rumors, depending on how you read stuff, maybe getting a final push from the Alex Bregman camp in terms of, upping some of the offers. As Christian in our YouTube chat says, we saw that the Cubs made an offer to Devin Williams. There is a lot, and I understand, there's a lot of offseason to go. And you guys know, I always say this, we'll judge the offseason. We'll judge Jed Hoyer on the team that shows up for spring training. And, at the end of March, it's actually playing games. But I do, at least as a fan, get some of the frustration, even if it's temporary, of, the Cubs offered on this guy. They were interested. They checked in on this guy, but, yet to come away with anything that feels like it's of real significance. But as you were watching the winter meetings interviews, Jed Hoyer, Craig Counsell, seeing some of the rumors, seeing some of the moves that were made, anything jump out to you as it relates to the Chicago Cubs?
The biggest thing Craig said that jumped out was the positional group health. He made a point several times in unrelated questions he was asked that the positional group last year was uniquely healthy. Going forward, he said and insinuated to expect that health would probably be, this is a strong word, but foolish. So my thinking is, and well, if they're talking about positional group health, then how much of an addition will they add to the positional group side? Is it Bregman or is it more just volume of bench bats? And then you start thinking, well, yeah, they were uniquely healthy, but if they're talking about depth, then the Bregman situation does lend some credence, right? That you can move around Shaw to be that quote unquote super utility guy.
Right. I agree with Craig, and I know the point. It is a funny thing to say when like an injury derailed your best player and like really messed up like the whole
Is that why you were smirking
thing.
over there?
No, I was smirking at your pronunciation of credence.
Shut up.
Credence
As I
Clearwater
said it,
Revival.
I knew I mispronounced it. I can't even talk right now. Okay, I'm sick. I got a cold. I'm
You're a
gonna blame
numbers
my
guy.
cold.
Don't worry about it.
Um,
Yeah, it's all very this offseason in particular is so fascinating because it does feel like there's a few things the Cubs want to address. We're going to keep seeing them load up on these relievers. We've heard them make offers or at least be interested in some of the top guys in the reliever class. Now, they didn't want to go 345 for a 35-year-old Suarez. I'm fine with that personally. But, we did hear them connected to maybe making an offer to Devin Williams. So they clearly have an interest in doing that. And
they did do the same last year. They offered
yeah,
Tanner almost, it was a few
yes.
$1 million off the Dodgers deal.
Yeah. So I expect them to keep doing that. And at this point, like I do trust how they cobbled together a bullpen. They're good at it. They're good at identifying these pitchers. They're going to take some swings and there will be misses. But I think until they prove otherwise, I do kind of trust them in terms of how they put that together. But the interesting thing for me, Brendan, is we're seeing them pretty significantly now. Of course, the usual caveat in the offseason that what gets put out there, is it coming from a team? Is it coming from an agent? There's all sorts of ulterior motives at play here, but we have seen them pretty like substantially connected to both top level bats and top level pitchers in both free agency and the trade market. So what's especially interesting about this offseason for me, Brendan, is it does feel like there's potential paths for them to do both, but there's certain paths that based on the math money wise, it's not going to work.
I
Right.
don't know if there's
So
a
like,
path to do both.
well,
I
so
think they're
I guess what I mean,
exploring both
Brendan,
paths.
the question to me is it possible that the Cubs really want to sign Alex Bregman and then they would swing a trade to add to the top of their rotation? Do they want to spend in free agency on their rotation? And then would they have to then give up that pursuit of a top level bat and instead opt for, more platoon guys or depth or just strengthening those roles? That's what I mean in terms of
Yeah.
like the paths, that it doesn't seem at this moment, even though they've been connected to both and seem to have an interest in upgrading in both areas. Most anyone talking about this, especially the people in the know, which is not me, like don't seem to think it's possible that they can sign, for example, Framber Valdez and Alex Bregman.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to do it all with just money. So it does become kind of fascinating because if you have a trade percolating, does that depend on, say, Bregman making a decision and choosing you? If you decide to go that route, do you have a trade kind of lined up and ready to go? It does feel like there's some potential options for Jed and company, and they may depend on one another in terms of what they ultimately end up wanting to do.
The threshold you and I are operating at is the one that the owner defined. That's the luxury tax. So as we sit here today, they're about $45 million away from that first tier. We all love talking about luxury tax. It's our favorite thing to talk about, but that is how the Cubs have operated in the years past. So if they sign Bregman, the projected annual average value for his deal is 30 million. So you subtract 30 from 45, you're left with 15 million before tier one. If you sign Framber Valdez, well, then you're already above the first tier. So when you're talking about lining up the deals, it would require trading someone who may be close to the teens or above in your salary. The guys we're talking about, maybe Jameson Taillon. He's making 17 million annual average value. I don't support it, but his name came up yet again. Nico Hoerner's contract, who's making over 10 million annual average value.
Can I jump in on that? I don't want to derail your train of thought here, but I continue to be, and I know you're going to agree with me. I get it. Contract's expiring. If he wants to go and make shortstop money and that's what his agency's telling him, et cetera, et cetera. It feels really difficult to me, Brendan, to envision how this team ends up in a better place. Now, certainly there's a lot of potential moves that could be made around it. Very difficult to see how this team feels better by trading Nico Hoerner. We were talking early in the offseason that they need more bats like that are just a little more consistent and provide that contact ability, higher average, not the whole lineup, but getting rid of your best guy, a guy who, as we were going through the end of the season and into the playoffs, he was your guy, like for clutch hitting with runners in scoring position, feeling confident against, that bevy of 99 plus relievers that the Padres were rolling out there. Feels very difficult to feel like they could end up in a position where we feel better about this team if Nico's not on it.
Well, you have to replace 4 wins. They talk about replacing Kyle Tucker's wins. You would have to replace Nico Hoerner's 4 wins. And the quote that Craig Counsell gave in that interview in the winter meetings, I'm going to read this off. It's probably the most complimentary quote I've seen a manager give really any player. This is what Craig said, quote, "When you say show up every day and complete every rep, that is Nico. Every rep is completed perfectly. That's who Nico is. It sounds easy. That's easy. Everyone can do it. I can do that. Well, you don't do it," end quote. So it speaks to his consistency. And you talk about ebbs and flows of certain players. Now we can go back and we can track the ebbs and flows, but anecdotally, it felt like Nico Hoerner was very consistent month to month. And he showed up in September, showed up in October, and he is also your backup shortstop. We talked about shortstop and positional health. Dansby Swanson's core injury from 2024. Part of the health and depth is to have a major league caliber shortstop beyond your starting one in Dansby Swanson. And Nico does offer that. If they were to trade Nico, they would have to be absolutely floored with immediate value at a cheaper rate. And the odds that can happen seem exceptionally unlikely.
Yeah, I'm with you. But, again, he's a valuable player. And for all the reasons we like him, that's why he would be attractive to another team, especially, again, not sure what his camp is thinking as far as what that value might be in free agency. Does he want to go back to playing shortstop, et cetera, et cetera? So I think you're going to continue to see that name pop up. It's the thing that I've noticed the last 2 off seasons, he's a very popular target for like writers and bloggers and podcasters of other teams. I see those tweets all the time, like, hey, if the Cubs would listen on Nico Hoerner, he'd be great to target. And then all the Cubs fans are like, stay away, mind your business, get out of here.
It's like the same discussion with the Mariners starting pitchers, they come up all the time.
Right. Like as if the Cubs don't want that player.
Right.
Like, hey, he'd be good for the Yankees. If the Cubs are, it's like, you get out of here. Don't come and poach our guys. Yeah. So we're going to head into our first ad break here, but I do want to get a breakdown on some of the pitchers. But I do think, and Uncle Ted in our YouTube chat here, appreciate all you joining live in the YouTube chat, pointing out some free agent names potentially from the KBO. That's also a variable too. Like there's bats from the MPB, KBO, certainly risk in terms of how that translates to Major League Baseball and whether the Cubs, want that risk in 2026 versus long-term, giving them time to adjust and things like that. But we have seen the Cubs play in this market. So we may be looking at some of the more obvious potential answers to some of these things in the MLB free agent market or trade market. But, the Cubs are known to be looking elsewhere. So there may be options that, I know some are considering at least a little bit, but maybe not as heavily as, just talking about Alex Bregman every day, right? But my takeaway from the meetings, Brendan, is like, and it's an annoying way to talk about it, but it's kind of just how it is for the Cubs for the last few off seasons. Like, there's clearly an interest in some of these areas. Now, is it just going to be a repetitive thing that the bidding reaches a certain point, the Cubs bow out, and yeah, hey, we would have liked to have upgraded third base, but we couldn't, or we decided not to, possibly, right? But there is a lot of smoke, and it's coming from them in addition to some of the connected writers. Like, they're making offers at the higher level of the starting pitching class. They're really connected to a guy that they've liked for years now in Alex Bregman. They're connected to some of these higher price relievers, offering, reported offers to some of them. So the interest is there. Whether they pull it off, that's what we wait and see. But anyway, we'll hit our first ad break here, get a breakdown of those new pitchers, and we'll keep talking about the rumors that the Cubs are connected to for now.
Hey, Cub fans, Toyota has 25 vehicles with available all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive. The RAV4 has legendary versatility. The Grand Highlander's adult-size third row is for real, and the Tacoma's wild side comes standard. From job size to camp size and game nights, there's an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive Toyota to get you there in style. Find yours today at toyota.com or visit your Chicagoland Toyota dealer today. Toyota, let's go places. Also, become a CHGO diehard and upgrade your fandom today. Get access to our exclusive written content, a free t-shirt, plenty of discounts on future merch and events, plus access to our CHGO Discord lounge where we all hang out and talk Chicago sports and so much more. Go to allchgo.com for the latest information, how you can join the thousands of CHGO diehards in our community. We cannot wait to connect with you on an ever greater level. Winter is here. Is your home ready for the cold? Got a plumbing emergency? Call Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Electrical issue? Call Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. You need a new hot water tank installed today? You know who to call. Now is the time to schedule your Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric furnace tune up today. If you're thinking about a whole home generator, they've also got you covered. At Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric, you get same-day installation for heating, cooling, plumbing, electrical, and generators with no extra charge for nights, weekends, or holidays. Right now, save up to $4,000 on furnaces and comfort systems. Furnaces, they just start at $39 a month, and furnace AC combos start at $57 a month. Serving Chicagoland for over 50 years, Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. Visit fourseasonsheatingcooling.com for special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com.
All right, Brendan, back with you. Let's talk the pitchers first, the moves they did make, and then we can get back to the rumors. Because I fear we run the risk. We just end up kicking the tires on like Bregman. We did this last year, like episode after episode. How would it fit? What would it, like we know by now, right?
I mean, the one thing I've learned is I'm not diving so much into rumors as I have in years past. I'm very flexible with what's reported. Nico rumors, Bregman rumors, minor league rumors. It is what it is. The front office is doing their due diligence in every single move. Yeah. What I do know is they're going to be around the first tier of a luxury tax. They're going to improve the team. It's just a matter of who is going to fit the pieces to that puzzle.
Good friend Greg Huss in the chat does wonderful writing, podcasting on all things Chicago Cubs in the minor league system. Asks what is my favorite of Brendan's ad reads. And I'm a company man, Greg. I think they're all wonderful. All of our sponsors are great.
Look at that.
And Brendan reads them so eloquently. He always pronounces words correctly. All right.
Want to do these ad reads over here? You can do the ad reads, Corey.
Let's talk about some of the signings that the Cubs did make. The two recent ones. We talked about Phil Maton, yes, last week. My timing is a little off.
Say his last name for me. What's his last name? Say it again.
Maton, is it not?
Maton.
Well, anyway.
Don't you know how to pronounce words?
That's someone's last name, not
I don't care. It's
English
a
word. Anyway.
It's a word.
The people don't tune in for us to bicker, Brendan. That's for behind the scenes. The two new additions, Snyder and Milner. Snyder being one that you had tweeted out recently as kind of a guy that you thought might pique the Cubs' interest based on some of his profile. And you had that one correct. As much as I hate to admit when you were correct, you did suggest that I think a couple weeks ago that he might be someone to expect the Cubs to look at. And then Hoby Milner coming over. Tell us what the Cubs have here. The first thing I'll say before you get into a more detailed analysis and repertoire and all that other stuff is kind of how we, started the conversation a little bit. Like, I do generally just trust them. I know at this point, while we're waiting for a bigger move, Cease is off the table. There's trades being made. Like, I know it gets, the impatience grows when all the Cubs have done so far is, a minor league bullpen move, a small major league bullpen move for a few $1 million, et cetera, et cetera. But as we saw last year, like, the volume play does work at a certain point, and the Cubs have proven to be good at identifying guys that they can bring into their system and get the most out of. I remember, like, last year when they acquired Caleb Thielbar, like, I don't recall that being a move that everyone was particularly excited about. But he ended up being great for the Cubs and pitching a lot of really important innings. Now, of course, like, there's the reverse of that, right? Like, they made the trade for Ryan Presley, or they make the trade for Eli Morgan, and those are ones that don't work out. But by the end of the year, they find themselves in a solid spot, and they've shaken things out to who can pitch those high leverage innings for them. So it's all just to say, like, I know these aren't the exciting moves. They're not the big moves, but they all play a role. And you just need to see them keep rolling in and trust that the Cubs will cobble together a bullpen one way or another. But now I'll turn it over to you for what exactly they're bringing in to the fold. I know the deals aren't exactly the same, but what they're bringing into the fold and how they may potentially utilize these guys. I think especially Milner.
Crick also said, also, not to go back so much to his interview, because I do think it was interesting, but he said they were right and wrong about the bullpen. They were right in that it was valuable. They were wrong in who provided that value. And the folks, the pitchers who provided the value were guys who were not projected at the forefront of the season to do so. We're talking about someone like Colin Snyder, maybe Hoby Milner, although he is getting nearly $4 million. That is a commitment. They do expect value out of that. But someone like Colin Snyder, let's talk about him. So first and foremost, whenever we look for new pitchers, I have one question that I address the most and first. It's how different is he? It's a general question. How different is he than the average pitcher? So I can go in and I can take every single StatCast measurement, I throw it at the wall, and the computer will tell me, hey, here's how different he is at a quantifiable level, and here's the reasons why. Now, let's take a look at what that looks like. Here is Colin Snyder's release point on the left. If you've watched Jameson Taillon over the years, or if you've watched Chris Flexen, those guys typically have higher release points. Flexen as an outlier and high release point. This pitcher, Colin Snyder, has a low release point. So he has a little bit more 3/4, very low in release. This is unique also in that his fastball shape with this low release point tends to have more of a straighter profile. Sometimes the pitch actually cuts, but it's more straight than most fastballs. This is one reason why you see on the right that he is away from the majority of pitchers or dots. He's in the red zone, and it's principally due to the combination of a low release angle and a straighter force seam. So the reason they're looking at someone like Colin Snyder is because they see, okay, well, he has natural mechanics that lend to developing other pitch types. So you could optimize those pitch types, increase the diversity of the mix, and yield value that way by just leveraging what he already has naturally. Tyler Zombro has worked with him in the years past. He had a very successful 2024 with Seattle, did not have the success last year. Some differences in cutter shape that may explain that. But generally speaking, what you expect from Colin Snyder and those minor league signings is uniqueness, a recency of not being productive or valuable, and also third, history of mechanics that the Cubs have successfully worked with to yield that value. And Colin Snyder fits that trifecta perfectly.
Okay.
And he won't be the last too.
Yeah.
This is part of the process. You need to find guys like Snyder because, quite frankly, you can't confidently project value. He is a risky guy, and it's manifested in the fact that he got a minor league deal.
Yeah.
No team believed he was worth spending, $5 million or more like Hoby Milner was.
Okay, so let's talk about Milner. I think on the surface, certainly what jumps out, obviously left-hander, slower throwing, which you always talk about like, oh, the Cubs love guys with cut on their fastball. They love guys that don't throw over 92 miles an hour. I'll tell you that.
Yep.
Besides Palencia, great success with some of those guys, however. But I think initially what jumps out here, Brendan, is since 2022, he's pitched at least 64 innings in every season. ERA jumps in inconsistency, but his FIP really consistent. 3.16 in 22, 3.13, 3.14, 3.39. So this is a guy that gets results, gets soft contact, ground balls, and he's been durable. He's been out there. So maybe not someone who is necessarily that top line arm, obviously a guy that we're going to anticipate closing games for the Cubs or being that Brad Keller fireman arm. But I guess the question to you as a lefty, does he replace Caleb Thielbar? Are they similar? What kind of role do you see him playing? And I don't know, maybe like where do you see these guys stack up in the current Cubs bullpen? Of course, remembering that the Cubs lost a decent amount of their significant contributors coming into next season. So just kind of trying to like envision the hierarchy with, at the moment, I think Daniel Palencia is on top and kind of building from there.
We'll do the hierarchy after the ad break, but before the ad break, I'll just do a quick breakdown of Hoby Milner, what stands out, and then we can do the ad break. So what stands out is he is a slower thrower, like you said, but he also has a lower release point, kind of almost a sidearm type pitcher. He throws a sweeper quite often, and that sweeper has success to left-handed batters. Where you can look at a point of improvement with Milner is trying to get an out pitch to right-handed batters. You mentioned Caleb Thielbar. Could he replace Caleb Thielbar's value? The reason he was successful last year was because he didn't have platoon problems. Thielbar had a more north to south profile. He had that wipeout curveball that we saw very often, and he had a four-seam fastball that was also straight. So this is someone who has a different profile. The way he has success like Thielbar is an addition maybe or a change to how he attacks right-handed batters. Right now, the profile is more attractive to lefties, but he could improve and have another attack strategy to righties. The interesting thing about Hoby Milner, and this is all speculation, but if you look at like his wrist angle, and I'm not going to show a graph here, but he lets go of pitches at a unique angle. I don't know if I can do this on the screen over here, but it's an angle that actually has some resemblance to Matthew Boyd. And Matthew Boyd, he's able to generate unique seam shifted wake on his changeup. And that's why Boyd's successful, because he can get right-handed batters out with a changeup. Now, they're very different in release points. Boyd is a little bit more higher. Milner's a lot more sidearm. So it's not apples to apples. But you look at some of the ways the Cubs have optimized certain pitchers with unique wrist angles. or release angles, that might be one way they end up trying to improve that changeup. So all this is to say is when spring starts, listen in to what they're talking about with Milner's off speed. The sweeper should be there, maybe a little bit of a change in the fastball, but really dial in if they're talking about the changeup, as Justin Steele talked about his changeup and Cade Horton talked about his changeup, and Brad Keller and Tyone in years past.
Sounds good. So we'll continue talking about the bullpen as it's the area the Cubs have added to recently after the second ad break here. And then we will dive into any of the remaining rumors as we round out the show here.
Okay, Potawatomi Casino Hotel. Let's talk about your next weekend escape, or maybe just your next big night out, because Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee has everything you need in one spot. We're talking thousands of the latest slots and table games. And if you're ready to refuel, you've got a ton of amazing restaurants and bars to choose from. Whether you're feeling fancy or just want a quick bite, they've also got you covered. You don't even have to leave the property. You can stay in style at their luxury hotel. It's just steps away from what many call the Midwest's best sports book. And if you're heading to a ball game during the summer, start your day right at Potawatomi. Hit the sports book, then head out to the game. It's all right there. Potawatomi is the perfect home base for all of it. Milwaukee's got a full summer lineup coming up. Concerts, festivals, sports, you name it. Potawatomi Casino Hotel Milwaukee. Your win is waiting, so go ahead and check it out today. Okay, new vehicles are in store at Ray Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, and this is your chance to score a great deal at the at the end of sales event. Head to Ray CDJR and Route 12 today to choose from their huge inventory of new Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram vehicles. Right now, get 0% financing for 72 months available on new models, plus shop over 125 vehicles priced under $20,000. With a friendly team of brand experts, the team at Ray CDJR is here to help you during each step of your car shopping journey. With Ray's Price Promise, you can shop confidently with no add-ons or hidden fees ever, because the price you see is the price you pay. It is that simple. So go check out our partner to shop one of the Chicago area's largest inventories to find the right new vehicle for you. Do not miss out on the year-end sales event for huge savings on new models. They've been serving the community since 1963. Go there today on Route 12 in Fox Lake or at raycdjr.com.
All right, back with you. Let's talk about where the bullpen kind of stands as it is. Now, looking at the 40-man now, certainly not sure exactly how the Cubs plan to utilize some of these guys. And of course, through spring training, non-roster invitees, there can be some significant shuffling there. But even just looking at some of the names who are in there potentially as of right now, Javier Assad, Ben Brown, Porter Hodge, Gavin Hollowell, Luke Little, Riley Martin, Phil Maton, Jack Neely, Daniel Valencia, Maton. I'll get it right eventually. Colin Ray, Ethan Roberts, potentially Jordan Wicks, adding in Milner, Snyder, minor league deal. So just guys in the fold. And then, of course, plenty of guys, of course, in the minors who can make their way up. But that was just reading through some of the guys already on the 40-man. When you look at that potential group, I think clearly from where we're sitting, I think higher leverage back end guy would be something you'd be looking for with like reliable experience in that regard. Again, you ended up trusting Brad Keller more than anybody else, and that's not initially what you thought when you signed him. So these things can change, but that stands out as a potential like glaring need, like someone with reliable, high leverage back end of the bullpen experience. And then asking, when you look at the diversity and stuff on this team, do you think there's any types of guys that they should be targeting outside of potentially just looking at them in terms of the leverage in which they might pitch?
I think
is this bullpen missing anything?
Well, from a stuff perspective, they're going to try to find the pitcher most likely to give you value. There's different shapes that come in that idea of trying to get value. So if we look at just who's going to give the most who's going to get the most innings by Fangraphs to start the season, here's the breakdown. So Danny Palencia is up top. You can consider this the closer. Phil Maton is the second guy, maybe your 8th inning, 7th inning guy. Porter Hodge is up there. Hoby Milner. We have Ethan Roberts. Those are your top 5 guys to start. Then you start going down the list. You can see, okay, well, yeah, I can see Luke Little giving you value. If Jordan Wicks is healthy and he's able to replicate what he did show in AAA last year, yeah, I could see Jordan Wicks giving value. We just talked about Colin Snyder. Of course, that's one of the gambles they're making right now to get value. The way it ends up looking is always different than what you and I talk about in December. And it's also very different than what you and I talk about in April. These bullpens are fluid, and it's a matter of trying to get as many gambles on your roster in the most cost-efficient way. That being said, in years past, they did spend close to $10 million on at least one reliever. Presley was around $8 million annual average value last year. The year before that was Hector Neris. So I do anticipate they're going to get one more guy, like you said, that is around that $10 million threshold. Maybe it's Peter Fairbanks. We've heard him connected to the Cubs. I like Peter Fairbanks a lot. He throws a lot of pitches the Cubs have had success with in years past. So I would be into someone like Peter Fairbanks at that price, but it still requires Peter Fairbanks and then some. And then some guys will be in the form of those non-roster invitees, or maybe even cheaper guys, lower than the 4 million AAV we saw.
Yeah, and question from Light Giving 2051 in the YouTube chat. Understand them going for shapes and stuff, but don't they need some stuff as well? I would expect that Fairbanks would fit that category. I would expect that they will add some guys that have more exciting stuff than.
Well, I mean, I would just highlight that Daniel Palencia's fastballs are one of the most electric fastballs in the sport.
It's nice to have more.
Of course, I would also, you talk about Phil Maton. His nickname, I think, is Spin Rates. Like, he has one of the most spinny curveballs in Major League Baseball. So they have stuff, guys. It's just making it work where that stuff turns to value.
Nice too, I think.
I mean, yeah, we could have some more gas. Peter Fairbanks would fulfill that as well.
Porter Hodge getting back to even close to that kind of initial form that we saw him would be a big one. And look, it's like sometimes these comparisons don't work exactly. There's a lot of nuance in what goes on. But I think, one of the better lessons potentially to be learned is, like, the Dodgers were winning games in the playoffs with Roki Sasaki closing games for them. And they spent a ton of money on high leverage back into the bullpen relievers. And it was a young starter that was closing games for them in the World Series. So it's just a lesson in, and it's similar to Brad Keller being the guy that we all trusted the most and were ready to, go down with the ship for, or even someone like Andrew Kittredge, who came over at the trade deadline, and sort of quickly vaults himself into that trust circle, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it will come with the useful exercise of every year they're going to do this, right? If they cobble things together this way, they're going to put some guys in maybe some potentially uncomfortable spots early in the season. And it might have you going, this guy in the 8th inning of a 2-1 game. And listen, I thought the same thing the first time Craig did it with Drew Pomeranz, right? And, later in the year, you're going, oh man, Pomeranz, he's nails. Nobody hits him. Yeah. So it's, as always, I don't like to appeal too much to authority and just assume no matter what they do, it will work. But this is a process that they have done a few times now over the years, and they're good at it. They will spend more, they will add some more proven guys, and the rest of it, it's a process to kind of sort it out. And some years, maybe those things fall into place a little quicker. And some years they don't. And then other years you feel like you have it figured out and your top guys get hurt and you have to scramble to sort of redo it all. So bullpens are a tricky exercise, but I think the Cubs are bringing in some interesting names and I trust them to fill out the rest. Now, the other facets of the team, I think, are potentially more interesting, Brendan.
Yeah, it's a matter of, okay, if you add a starting pitcher, how do you go about doing it? Right?
Yeah.
It's like, talked about this last week, but you see the risk profiles to every single pitcher. You can look at Michael King, and the first risk profile there that stands out is the health. You can look at Edward Cabrera as a trade candidate, 27 years old, 3 years of team control, but he had an elbow injury last year. A unique pitcher with an unorthodox attack strategy that may require someone like Matt Shaw being given up in a deal. You look at someone like Tatsuya Amai, who has also unique fastball profile, but we don't really know how that's going to play up to major league hitters. There's a lot of well if for every pitcher that's currently available.
Which I do think is okay. Like, I think if this were a rotation where, you know, we were looking and scratching our head, like, I don't know who the, you know, fourth guy is. I don't know who the fifth guy is, but like the Cubs have a lot of options and certainly they carry their own risks. Guys are on different timelines, health-wise, age-wise, all sorts of, you know, things to consider. But they've got a pretty solid group of options, even as it stands right now. And I do expect them to make another significant addition. Now, whether that comes, as you mentioned, free agency, trade, and the range of those pitchers is wide. But let me put it to you this way, and maybe it helps guide the conversation. Like going back to the potential paths we were talking about before, like if this is very rough, it doesn't necessarily have to work this way. It doesn't have to be these exact players. But if I were to present a situation to you where the Cubs sign a top free agent starting pitcher, I know you've been seemingly most intrigued by Framber Valdez. Has that changed in the last week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by all of them. The Framber Valdez is the most projectable value. So
Fine.
I want the most projectable
Let's
value.
say Valdez or Michael King. We'll use those two as an example.
Sure.
They sign one of those guys. They keep adding depth in the bullpen. Maybe they do shell out whatever it takes for Fairbanks, and they add some depth offensive guys. Maybe, you know, like someone like Ref Snyder, a strong platoon split guy. He plays a specific role, but they don't make a big splash on offense. Or they sign Alex Bregman. They also keep building out the bullpen. I'd imagine you could still do Fairbanks in that spot. And then maybe the only other starting pitching addition is someone who there was I think, pretty premature rumor earlier this week, like someone like Zach Gallen, to just add more into the rotation, but they're not getting someone you're looking at as like, oh, okay, this guy's like for sure slotting in the top, you know, one or two of our rotation. There's no, you know, significant question marks, right? Of those two paths. And again, not perfect, may not have to be, you know, binarily one or the other like that. But is there a direction you prefer if you had to pick one?
The direction I prefer.
Sorry, in the Bregman example, the other option is like Galen, or they trade for someone like Cabrera, but that eats away at potentially whatever the price is, Matt Shaw, Owen Casey, whoever it is that you end up having to give up, whether it's Cabrera, Alcantara, Joe Ryan, et cetera, et cetera. Is there a direction that you prefer of those paths if you were given the choice?
In a vacuum, the one guy that's most likely to give you value is Bregman. That includes the Valdez, the King comparisons. It's probably Bregman because of his unique contact and power approach as an infielder who can play second base as well. I go back and forth in how I look at Shaw's projection. The second half was so intriguing, and part of me is genuinely curious how stable that is, because some of the trends do suggest stability. he was able to hit for more power without sacrificing contact in that second half. So I'm not going to go with Bregman as the one guy I would prefer. If I'm going to sign anyone and target anyone from this group, I'm going to go with locking down stable pitching. So I still stand by, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to sign Framber Valdez. I like King. I think King has the better stuff. I think he has a higher ceiling, but I'm going to go with ensuring I have a base of value, and that is Framber Valdez. Then I'm going to try, like you said, to build up my depth on the positional side. So I'm not going to go out and get a splashy positional hitter, but I am going to go and build my depth that way. Which players fit that depth project? You guys can do all the tricks, but it's not going to be anyone that you particularly like on paper right away. That would be my path forward, especially because after 26, the books are clear. Tyone's off, Nico for better. Actually, for worse, he's off the books. Ian Happ is off the books. Say is off the books. I think you can staple down pitching value in Framber Valdez, and his profile does suggest, at least for the next 2-3 years, unless an injury happens, is probably going to yield value.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I go back and forth on it, frankly.
Let's do the ad break, and then we can talk about this, because I go back and forth too, right? You can catch me tomorrow and I might say something completely different, but I still stand by that right now today. I think Framber Valdez is the path to go. And I know people don't like hearing that, but I still think that.
Sounds good. We'll hit our last ad break here. We'll be back in a minute.
Okay, you know that moment when you suddenly realize your favorite sunglasses are gone? Left at the beach, on the roof of your car, or somehow at a gas station 3 states away? Yeah, I've been there too. In fact, I almost left them at the beach last week when you guys were shivering in the cold and snow. I was at the beach. That's why I started wearing Shady Rays, and honestly, it changed the game. These sunglasses, they're made for real life. They look great. They're polarized. They're durable. They're not ridiculously expensive, my favorite. And here's the wild part. If you lose them or break them, yes, even on day one, Shady Rays replaces them. There's no awkward forms. There's no guilt trip, just a brand new pair. So now I actually wear my sunglasses without ever stressing about it. I can go on hikes. I can go to concerts, on the boat, to the beach, wherever life happens. I know Shady Rays is eyewear that actually has your back. Okay. I'll be honest. Football season hits a little different when you've got everything lined up. The snacks are ready. The game's on. Ben Johnson scheming up. And for me, a stop at Sunnyside Dispensary is part of the routine now. What I like most about Sunnyside is how chill it is. It's totally judgment-free, whether you know exactly what you're looking for or you're just browsing, and the selection is wild, over 100 different strains. Plus, you can order online and swing by for in-store pickup, which makes life easy. And wherever you are in Illinois, Sunnyside has you covered. They've got locations from Champaign all the way up to South Beloit. So there's almost always one nearby. And if you ever got questions, their staff actually knows their stuff and helps you find what fits your vibe. Right now, they've got Bright Buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Just use promo code HICHGO at checkout. And if you're returning customers, you can use CHGO50. Exclusions do apply. Sunnyside Dispensary, Bright Buys every day, only for 21 and over or Illinois medical card holders.
All right, back with you. I do find myself, Brendan, I understand like the comparison. I know Matt Shaw had a better second half than him by some metrics. Yeah. I'm into the Bregman thing, man. I'm not going to lie to you.
I mean, I swear to God, you ask him tomorrow, I might say the same thing.
And I'm like looking through the rumors, and I'm kind of like thinking about this team and like, what do I want to read? I kind of want them to sign Alex Bregman. I think that's what I want. And that doesn't mean that I want, like if it necessitated them trading Shaw, I guess that's a separate question, but I don't think that it has to. We've talked about the super utility potential, and it would certainly just depend if you were going to swing a trade for a pitcher from another team, it depends on what that organization wants. We heard that, there was a certain ask at the deadline last year that the Cubs didn't have a ton of strong options for. So it sort of depends if that has changed. If you're talking to these teams, whether it's the Marlins, the Twins, or whoever is interested in selling. I just like what Bregman brings to the table. Yeah, that's
I
that's
mean,
that's what I think. And like, to be clear, like he's not, he's not replacing Tucker in a sense that he's that, 7, 8, 9 win potential guy, or someone who's going to slug as much, anything like that. But, you look at like his lines from several, he's a very consistent player. He's not the type of player who is, a valley of batting average, 270-ish kind of guy, gets on base 100 points-ish higher, slugs 100-ish points higher, like just kind of a consistent, really good hitter, veteran. And look, like I'm not here to relitigate, the Astros and the trash cans and all that other stuff. Like, didn't really affect the Cubs. And if he was playing on this team, what is that, 8 years later? I don't care. Right. Like, but the reason I bring that up is because I know some people will roll their eyes, but like really glowing reports of him as a clubhouse presence. We've seen the Cubs value that. We've seen the value in that in younger players. And I think, bringing in another guy who knows how to win, who's been routinely on teams that have been competitive, is consistent and a good offensive player, I I think that that's fine. And I see the question in the chat from Light Giving 2051. Do you really want to run with a 31-year-old guy in Bregman when the next window could be starting after next year? Contracts are up. Don't you want to go younger for a newer, longer window? I think with someone like Bregman, like you'd be doing that knowing that the space is kind of freeing up. You're going to have some space. You can potentially move Bregman to another position in the future. He can DH if it's necessary. I think all that stuff, works itself out. But I also don't think that Bregman is going to be someone who's getting a 7-year contract or a 10-year contract, like we saw, what was it, Bogarts for 13. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. Like,
11.
there was reports today, and why I said maybe there's a kind of a last push from his camp. Like, there was a, talk today that, Boris was pushing the Mariners to get involved, maybe suggesting that the offers aren't there, that they really are like wanting, or, we're expecting coming into this offseason. So I don't think it's the type of moves that's going to like clog up your books, or really be like that detrimental. You
No.
have so much money coming off. You can replace those things in a lot of creative ways. And, look, hopefully you continue having guys like PCA, Shaw, Bush. If Ballesteros gets a run, if Owen Casey gets a run, you continue bringing up guys that are producing for you on pre-arbitration contracts or lower level arbitration contracts that, as the Chicago Cubs, you shouldn't care if you're paying Alex Bregman for, 4 years or whatever it is. I just think of the options. They're not going to sign Kyle Tucker, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think of the options. He's just a very solid player, and I think would complement what we've talked about, Brendan, in that some of the guys that you do have are neutralized by certain splits. You have some guys that, at least so far, just have not proven they can hit left-handed pitching as left-handed hitters, and guys that are a little more volatile. They, have high peaks, low valleys, and where they kind of land in the future is a little bit up in the air. Bringing a guy like Bregman, he's consistent. He's going to be a good, solid hitter, and I'm into it. I like it. I've
No, I hear
decided that I
you.
like it.
I hear you. I'm just trying to look at 2026 and assign more weight to 2026 than future years. I know it's a balance. I look at the roster, and without Kyle Tucker, they were still a top 3 team in overall value last year from the positional side. I understand all the injuries, and the way you presented Bregman, that's exactly the reason why I would want Bregman. And I want to make that clear. The difference between Bregman and Valdez, it is minimal for me. I would gladly welcome either one. And for Michael King, I would gladly welcome Michael King as well. I think, though, that the margin for error in pitching value in 26 is greater than the positional side. Ideally, I need to improve both. But given the luxury tax and the financial implications, it appears likely that you can't do both unless they get creative. That's why I would like Valdez. Now, there's also a little bit of nuance there where I do look at Matt Shaw, and we can get into it maybe on a different episode, but I was skeptical of the second half numbers. Like I saw every game you saw. I saw how he faded off a little bit in September. And I thought, man, there's really no way that second half offensive performance is something that you can expect going forward. And you can't. But then the question came to me when I was looking into it. It's like, well, he made some pretty big changes that made this hitter profile that looks like the profile you and I like. Someone that pulls the ball hard, that does not whiff, and has power at the third base position with Gold Glove-esque defense. So part of me is curious to give that more runway, especially because the positional group is projected to provide value, more value than the pitching side. That's why right now I would like to ensure that the pitching stability is locked up. And I think Valdez provides that more than anyone else on the market. I do think King, though, has the higher ceiling, but I'm talking about stability for 26 and then beyond.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they'll make additions to every facet of the team as the offseason goes on. How significant, of course, we'll see. I do think if you are conceding that it's, you can kind of do this or you can do this, but you can't just throw money at both. Like, as you put it, the question is, which group are you more confident in to kind of work without really doing that much?
I will say it's what we're confident in, but if you look at how the front office is operated, they don't give long deals out over $100 million to starting pitchers. They do for positional players. So,
well, we heard that they would have for Cease.
Cease
if you believe that.
Cease is almost, he's making over 200 million. I know you have the deference and everything, but for someone like Valdez and Bregman, we do know they gave Dansby Swanson $177 million. They typically don't give long-term contracts to pitchers. The last big-time contract to a pitcher was during the Theo presidency when they gave Yu Darvish 6 years for $120 million or something like that. So, if you want to go by history, if they're going to pick one, I actually may think the Cubs may pick Bregman over Valdez, even though I think I personally would pick Valdez. It's a weird thing to reconcile.
We'll see. Yeah.
Bregman would be sick though. Just the attitude that he would fit with this roster is perfect. I would definitely love
right now, if you made me choose and, we're playing with the money as we expect it to be, I would sign Bregman. I'd keep signing bullpen guys, and I would swing a trade for another starter that you're confident in. And you guys know me. I don't know if Greg Huss is still here. I assume he doesn't like to hear this, but the prospects leave the door. I never think about it again. I do not. I don't live in regret of that. It's annoying, certainly, the years that Eloy would come and hit game-winning home runs for the White Sox or things like that. Yeah, of course. I'm not I see it. I just don't care. Yeah. I want the Cubs to win now, and we'll figure it out later. But I don't live in regret on those moves unless the swings they're taking don't make sense.
Greg says trade prospects for Joe Ryan.
All right, so there you go. Greg understands. He understands where I'm coming from.
Yeah, he's saying trade for Joe Ryan. But the last comment I have with the argument for Bregman is, if I were Nico Horner, I would absolutely test free agency as a shortstop. When you're a shortstop at heart.
Well, don't give him the idea.
Nico wants to play shortstop, right? And you're going to make more money than that. So if you're the Cubs, he's thinking that. You unfortunately had to prepare for Nico's potential departure. And what better reserve than Alex Bregman and Matt Shaw? I hate saying that. I would extend Nico. I would let Nico be a front office executive. I let the contract go all the way out through retirement. But you do have to be realistic.
There's a lesson in why you and I don't run the team, because it would basically be a 45-year-old John Lester holding down the rotation and Nico Horner getting paid as much as he asked for. $300
million,
whatever position he wanted. So
player
that's
manager
why we don't run the
Nico
team.
Horner. Yeah, exactly.
That's why we don't run the team. Chris Bryant would also be on a 15-year contract that we are all, living in deep regret of every day. So
that left-handed reliever, his name is Anthony Rizzo.
Yeah, great. There, we solved it. So as we know, a lot of offseason left. If the Cubs don't make significant moves, we'll hold them to the fire for it. But as of right now, there's a lot of runway left. There's a lot of paths left, a lot of good players left. And we'll see what Jed does. So not super exciting so far, but a lot of offseason to go. CHGO Cubs will have you covered the entire way. We'll do an emergency show if we have to. Don't forget to tune in to Luke and Joey throughout the week. We appreciate you. Brendan and I will be back with you next Thursday. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.